He invited his ex-wife to the wedding solely to humiliate her in front of his entire family. But when that white limousine pulled up and she stepped out with 2 twins and a millionaire, he realized he had dug his own grave. Liam held the wedding invitation in his hands, a chilling smile playing on his lips. It was the smile of someone plotting something cruel, the kind that made your stomach churn just by looking. He typed a message on his phone, paused, deleted, typed again. He wanted every word to sting, like a perfectly aimed jab. Aife, you need to come to Siobhan's wedding. I want you to see how well I'm doing without you. He sent it. He chuckled to himself. The revenge was only just beginning. Across the city, Aife looked at her phone, her hands trembling. It wasn't just the invitation. It was the way he wrote, as if he were a king summoning a beggar for amusement. She knew exactly what Liam was doing. He wanted her to appear broken, penniless, so he could show his whole family how right he had been to abandon her. That was what he had wanted since the divorce, to prove she was worthless. Finn and Rory were playing on the floor of their small flat when they saw their mother collapse onto the sofa. The twins were 4 years old, but they already knew when something was wrong. Finn, always the more talkative, dropped his toy car and ran to her. "Mammy, why are you crying?" Rory followed close behind, with his shyer manner, but equally worried. Aif tried to dry her tears too quickly, but couldn't hide that she was shattered inside. "It's nothing, my loves," she lied, pulling them both into a tight hug. But Finn wasn't foolish. He had seen his mother cry many times since their father left. "It's because of Da again, isn't it?" The innocent question was like a punch to Aife's chest. How could she explain to 2 children that their own father hated them so much that he wanted to humiliate their mother in front of everyone? Rory, who rarely spoke about his father, whispered softly, "Mammy, Da really doesn't like us, does he?" His voice was so small, so broken, that Aife felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. She looked at those 2 boys, too beautiful for the cruel world, and something inside her completely broke. Tears began to stream uncontrollably. Aif remembered the day she told Liam she was pregnant with twins. He remained silent for long minutes, looking at her as if it were her fault. 2 children, Aif, 2, as if it were a tragedy, as if she had ruined his life on purpose. She should have realized then that he would never love those children. But she believed that when they were born, everything would change. How foolish. Liam only got worse. "My princes," she said, holding the boys' faces in her hands. "You are the most precious things in this world. If someone can't see that, the problem lies with that person, never with you." Finn listened seriously, as if engraving every word. Rory just snuggled closer to his mother's lap. They didn't fully understand, but they sensed she was trying to protect them from something very bad. The phone rang suddenly, an unknown number. Aife hesitated before answering. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was masculine, calm, but there was something about it that caught her attention. "Aife, my name is Connor. I overheard a conversation I shouldn't have." She frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Connor sighed on the other end of the line. "Your ex-husband was in the restaurant below my building, talking too loudly about his plan to humiliate you at the wedding." Aif's blood ran cold. "What plan?" Connor paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "He said he invited you knowing you don't have money for nice clothes, that he wants the whole family to see you in the mud." Those were his exact words. Aife closed her eyes, feeling rage rise in her throat. Of course, that was it. Liam was always too cowardly to confront her alone. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked suspiciously. Connor took a deep breath. "Because I've been through something similar. I know how much it hurts to be humiliated by someone who should protect you." There was real pain in his voice, something Aif recognized immediately. It was the voice of someone who had been broken and managed to rebuild. "And why else?" he continued. "I saw your children playing in the building's common area yesterday. 2 boys too lovely to have a father who doesn't value them." Finn tugged at his mother's blouse. "Who is it, Mammy?" Aife covered the phone and whispered, "A man who wants to help us." Finn's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Rory just watched, as he always did when something new happened. "Help how?" Finn insisted. "Because 4-year-olds want to know everything." "I don't know yet, love. Let Mammy talk." Aife, Connor spoke again. "May I make a proposal? I know it might sound crazy, but listen to me to the end." She looked at her children, at the cursed invitation on the table, at the small flat she could barely afford. "I'm listening." Connor paused again. "I'm in a position to, shall we say, level the playing field, make your ex-husband swallow his own words." "How?" Curiosity was killing Aife. Connor chuckled softly, but it wasn't a malicious laugh. It was the laugh of someone about to bring justice. Trust me, just for today? Aif looked at Finn and Rory, who watched her with those big eyes, full of hope. They deserved to see their mother happy at least once. They deserved to feel special, as every child should. Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us. Connor remained silent for so long that Aif thought the call had dropped. When he spoke again, his voice was choked, because when I was your children's age, my father humiliated me in front of everyone, and no one defended me. I never forgot how small I felt that day. Tears returned to Aif's eyes, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of pain. They were tears of someone who had just found an angel when she needed one most. I accept, she whispered, but with one condition. My children cannot be hurt in this, if it's dangerous for them in any way. Aifa, Connor interrupted gently. Your children will feel like princes today. I promise you on my honor. There was so much sincerity in his voice that she believed him immediately. What do I need to do? Connor laughed. And this time, the laugh was full of mischief. Just trust me, and get ready, because you three are going to put on the greatest show that family has ever seen. When Aoife hung up the phone, Finn was already beside her, curious. Mammy, is the man going to help us? She smiled, and it was the first real smile in weeks. Yes, my love. Today we're going to the wedding like royalty. Rory brightened for the first time. Are we going to be real princes? Aif hugged her two children, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Across the city, Liam finished telling his mother how Aife would appear at the wedding. Ma'am, you'll see. She'll arrive all disheveled, in old clothes, dragging those children. Everyone will realize I was right to leave her. Maya shook her head in disgust. Serves her right. Son. Who told her to ruin a family? But Liam had no idea he had just signed his own sentence, because Connor O'Sullivan wasn't just a kind neighbor. He was the man who would turn Aifa's worst day into her best. And Liam, well, Liam was about to discover that some revenges have the power to turn against those who plan them. The game was set, and for the first time in years, Aifa held all the cards. Connor O'Sullivan stood in front of the mirror in his penthouse apartment when he decided that day would be the most important of his business life. Not because of the millions he moved daily, but because he would finally use his power for something that truly mattered. He had heard every venomous word Liam spoke in the restaurant, every cruel detail of the plan to destroy Aife, and it stirred something very deep within him. 20 minutes later, Connor knocked on Aife's flat door. When she opened it, he could barely hide his surprise. Even with red eyes from crying, even in simple clothes and messy hair, she had something special, a dignity that all the humiliations in the world couldn't take away. Connor? She asked uncertainly. He smiled the gentlest way he could. Hello, Aifa. I've come to meet the princes who live here. Finn came running before his mother could even finish inviting him in. You're the man from the phone, he shouted excitedly, stopping right in front of Connor and looking him up and down with that unfiltered curiosity of children. Rory followed more slowly, hiding somewhat behind his mother, but observing everything carefully. Connor knelt to be at the boy's height, and Aifa noticed he did it naturally, without rushing. Finn and Rory, isn't it? Connor extended his hand to greet each one, as if they were important adults. The twins beamed with the attention. Mammy said you're going to help us be princes, Finn said animatedly. Connor laughed, but it was a warm, affectionate laugh. You already are princes. We're just going to make everyone realize it. Rory finally approached. Really? His tiny voice came out timid, but full of hope. Really? Connor confirmed. And Aife saw something in his eyes that made her trust him completely. It wasn't pity or charity. It was genuine respect for her and the boys. But first, I need to tell you who I really am. A frowned. What do you mean? Connor stood up and went to the window, looking at the city below. I'm not just a neighbor who overheard a conversation by chance. Connor turned to her, and there was something different in his posture now. More serious, more imposing. My name is Connor O'Sullivan. I own the O'Sullivan Group, one of the largest logistics companies in Ireland. Aif felt her legs go weak. She knew that name. Everyone knew it. You're joking, she whispered. Connor took a wallet from his pocket and showed her some cards. CEO, president, founder, all true. Why didn't you tell me that on the phone? Aife was trying to process the information. Connor sighed, sitting on the sofa next to the boys, who continued playing as if nothing had changed. Because I wanted you to trust me as a person, not as a rich businessman. He looked at Finn and Rory. And because I know you wouldn't accept help if you thought it was charity. Finn dropped his toy car and climbed onto Connor's lap unceremoniously. Uncle Connor, are you really rich? Connor chuckled at the direct question. Yes, I am. Rory also approached, curious. Richer than Da? The innocent question made a heavy silence fall in the room. Connor looked at Aoife, who was clearly uncomfortable. Much richer than your father, Rory. But do you know what makes me richer than him? What? Both asked at the same time. Connor hugged the boys. It's having you two here with me now. Your father lost the greatest treasures of his life when he abandoned you. The words came out so sincerely that Aoife felt her eyes fill with tears again, but this time they were good tears. Someone finally saw her children as she saw them, as the special children they were. Connor, Aoife said softly, why do you really want to do this? He remained quiet for a moment, playing with Finn's hair, who had snuggled into his lap. Because when I was 7, my father took me to a company party. I was all dressed up, excited to meet his colleagues. Connor's voice grew softer, sadder. But when we got there, he told everyone I was the maid's son, that my mother had tricked him into believing he was my father. Connor paused, took a deep breath. Everyone laughed. I stood there, 7 years old, being humiliated by my own father in front of strangers. Aoife placed her hand on his shoulder. Connor, he shook his head. I never forgot how small I felt that day, invisible, as if I was worth nothing. Rory, who was listening to everything, even being so small, approached Connor. Uncle, were you sad? Connor smiled, even with teary eyes. Very sad, Rory. But do you know what happened next? The boys shook their heads. I decided that when I grew up, I would never let anyone feel the way I felt that day. Finn clapped his hands. Like a superhero? Connor laughed. Like a superhero, Finn. And your father? Aoife asked gently. Connor became serious again. He died a few years ago. Poor. Alone. After losing everything gambling. He looked at the boys. Do you know the last thing he told me? Aoife shook her head. That he regretted rejecting me. That I was the only good thing he had ever done in his life, and he was too foolish to realize it. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of people who understood each other, without needing to say much. That's why, Connor continued, when I heard your ex-husband planning to humiliate you, and, by extension, these boys, I knew I couldn't stand by. He looked directly into Aoife's eyes. Because you three deserve to be treated like royalty. And today, that's exactly what's going to happen. Finn jumped from Connor's lap excitedly. Are we going to be real kings? Connor stood up as well. You're going to be the kings of the party, Finn. Everyone will stop and stare when you arrive. Rory clasped his hands excitedly. And Mammy will be a queen? Connor looked at Aoife, and there was something different in his gaze now, something that made her heart race. Your mother has always been a queen, Rory. It's just that today everyone will realize it. What exactly are you planning? Aoife asked, a little nervous. Connor smiled, and this time his smile had a mischievous quality. First, we'll make you shine as you deserve. Clothes fit for royalty. A car to match. The whole production. He paused dramatically. And then we'll go to this wedding and show your ex-husband that he made the biggest mistake of his life. But what if he finds out who you are? Aoife was worried. Connor chuckled softly. Ah, Aoife, that's the best part. He approached her, speaking softly so the boys wouldn't hear everything. Liam has been working for me for 3 years at the regional branch. He has never seen me in person. He only knows my signature on documents. Aif's jaw dropped. Are you serious? Completely serious. He always says he has important contacts in the company, that he knows influential people. The truth is, he's just a common salesman who constantly brags about things he doesn't have. Connor laughed. Today, he'll discover that the boss, he so often badmouths behind his back, is dating the woman he abandoned. Finn tugged at Connor's trousers. Uncle, does Da work for you? Connor knelt again. Yes, he does, but don't you worry about that now, okay? Rory also approached. He'll be angry. Connor looked at Aoife, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Perhaps he will, Rory, but sometimes people need to get angry to learn to be better. Connor, Aoife said, her voice trembling. Are you sure about this? I don't want my children to see a fight. Connor stood up and placed his hands on her shoulders. Aoife, trust me, there won't be a fight. There will be justice. A polite, elegant, but definitive justice. He looked at the boys who were watching everything carefully, and these princes here will see that there are people in the world who truly value them. Aoife took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she felt she wasn't alone, that someone was truly on her side. Okay, she said finally. But promise me you'll protect them? Connor smiled, and it was the most sincere smile she had ever seen. Aoife, from today onwards, I will protect the three of you as if you were my own family. Finn and Rory ran to hug Connor, who received them with genuine affection. Uncle Connor, will you be our new Da? Finn asked innocently. Connor looked at Aoife over the boys' heads, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. Who knows, Finn? Who knows? And at that moment, Aoife knew her life was about to change forever, for the better. Aoife spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling, and wondering if she was doing the right thing. Connor seemed sincere, but something in the back of her mind told her that stories too good to be true usually were exactly that, well-told lies. She looked at Finn and Rory sleeping peacefully in the bed next to her, and felt her chest tighten. What if it was all a cruel trick? What if Connor was a friend of Liam's, plotting something even worse? When the phone rang at 7 a.m., she had already been awake for hours. "Good morning, Aoife. Ready for the big day?" Connor's voice sounded animated, full of energy. Aoife took a deep breath before responding. "Connor, I need to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest with me." On the other end, he became serious. "Of course, you can ask anything." Aoife closed her eyes. "Why do you really want to do this? And don't give me that kindness story. Nobody spends so much money on strangers for no reason." The silence on the other end was too long. When Connor spoke again, his voice was different, heavier, more real. "You're right. I didn't tell you everything." Aoife felt her stomach churn. "What? What else is there?" Connor sighed deeply. "Aoife, I don't live in that building by chance. I bought the flat here because I wanted to be close to you." Her blood ran cold. "What do you mean, close to us? Are you stalking me?" "It's not that," Connor said quickly. "Let me explain everything, please." Aoife was ready to hang up, but something in his voice made her hesitate. "Just tell me, Connor." He took another deep breath. 6 months ago, Liam tried to pull a scam on me, a multi-million euro scam that almost destroyed my company. The words hit Aoife's stomach like punches. "What scam?" Connor was quiet for a few seconds. "He forged my signature on contracts, embezzled €2 million from the company." Aoife felt her legs go weak. "You're joking?" Connor continued, his voice increasingly tense. "I had 2 options. Have him arrested or investigate why a common employee would do such a thing. I chose to investigate." Aoife sat up in bed, trying to process the information. "And what did you find out?" Connor paused dramatically. "I discovered he had an ex-wife and 2 children he abandoned. I discovered he was desperate for money to impress his new girlfriend. That's why you came after me." Aoife was beginning to understand. Connor sighed. "At first, yes. I wanted to understand what kind of woman married a man capable of stealing millions." His voice softened. "But when I saw you working at the grocery store, raising the boys alone, paying all the bills honestly, I realized you were the victim, not the accomplice." Finn appeared at the bedroom door, rubbing his eyes. "Mammy, who are you talking to?" Aoife covered the phone. "To Uncle Connor. Love, go back to bed." But Finn approached, curious as ever. "Uncle Connor, today's the day to be a prince." Aoife returned to the phone, and Connor had heard everything. "Aoife," he said softly, "I know lying wasn't right, but everything I said about wanting to protect you is true." "Connor," Aoife said, her voice trembling, "did you get your money back?" He was quiet. "I did. Liam returned everything when he found out I knew. But do you know what part infuriated me the most?" Aoife waited. "When I confronted him, do you know what he said?" Connor paused, and there was real anger in his voice. "He said it was your fault, that you forced him to steal because you demanded too much from him." The rage that rose in Aoife's throat was so intense that she had to stop herself from screaming. "He said that?" Connor confirmed. "He did, and it was at that moment that I decided he was going to pay for everything, not just the theft, but for destroying a family and still having the nerve to blame the victim." Aoife wiped away a stray tear. "So that's why you want to help me. It's not kindness, it's revenge." "It started as revenge," Connor admitted. "But yesterday, when I met you and the boys," he paused as if choosing his words. "Yesterday, it became protection, it became justice, and it became something I didn't expect to feel." Aoife closed her eyes. "What?" Connor took a deep breath. "It became love, Aoife, for you and the boys." Rory appeared at the door too, still sleepy. "Mammy, where's breakfast?" Aoife looked at her 2 children, with their messy hair and sleepy faces, and made a decision. "Connor, do you promise my children won't get hurt in this?" He didn't hesitate. "I promise on my life." Aoife sighed. "Then let's do this, but your way, completely." 2 hours later, Connor knocked on the door, carrying 3 enormous boxes. Finn and Rory ran to open it before their mother even got close. "Uncle Connor, what's in the box?" Finn shouted excitedly. Connor smiled, but Aoife noticed a nervousness in his smile. Princess's clothes, he replied. But before we open them, I need to tell you something serious. Connor knelt in front of the twins, getting to their height. Finn, Rory, you know we're going to the wedding today and you'll see your da, right? The boys nodded. Rory, who always got quieter when they talked about his father, hid behind his brother. Are you afraid of him? Connor asked gently. Finn shook his head, trying to be brave, but Rory whispered softly, he shouts a lot. The confession came out so small, so frightened, that Connor felt his chest tighten. Afe approached, placing a hand on Rory's shoulder. He won't shout today, my love. Uncle Connor will be with us. Connor looked at her, then at the boys. Rory, can I tell you a secret? The boy peeked out from behind his brother, curious. What secret? Connor smiled. I was also afraid of my father when I was little. He also shouted a lot. Rory moved a little closer. And then what did you do? Connor took his small hand. I grew up and learned that fathers who shout do so because they are the ones who are afraid. Afraid of not being important. Finn, who was listening to everything, asked, Is our da afraid? Connor nodded. Very afraid. Finn, afraid that you'll grow up and realize he's not a good father. Rory frowned, thoughtful. But we already know that. The innocent and devastating answer made Connor laugh, but it was a sad laugh. Exactly, Rory. That's why he's trying to make your mammy look bad, so you don't realize that he's the bad one. Afe sat on the floor beside them. Boys, today you're going to see a lot of people. Some people might say bad things about mammy. Finn became serious. What kind of things? Afe took a deep breath. They might say, mammy doesn't take good care of you, that you're badly dressed, ill-mannered. Rory was indignant. But that's a lie. Mammy takes super good care of us. Connor smiled. This time a genuine smile. It's a lie indeed, Rory, and today everyone will see the truth. He pointed to the boxes. How about we look at these clothes? Finn and Rory ran to the boxes as if it were Christmas. When they opened them, their eyes sparkled with admiration. They were perfect children's tuxedos, their size, with patent leather shoes and even bow ties. Wow, Finn shouted. Like a prince in a movie? Rory picked up the bow tie, enchanted. Uncle Connor, are these really ours? Connor nodded. Only yours. And there's more. He opened the third box, revealing a royal blue dress that made Afe gasp. It was the most beautiful dress she had ever seen. Connor, she whispered. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, he replied, looking into her eyes. You deserve to feel like the queen you always were. Finn and Rory ran off to change, too excited to stand still. While they were getting ready in the bedroom, Connor approached Afe. There's one more thing I haven't told you. She looked at him, worried. What now? Connor took a key from his pocket. The limousine I rented isn't rented. I frowned. What do you mean? He smiled, but there was nervousness in his smile. It's mine. I bought it yesterday for you. I felt her legs go weak again. Connor, are you mad? Why would you do that? He approached her, holding her hands in his. Because for the first time in my life, I found something worth more than all my millions. He looked into her eyes, and there was absolute truth there. I found a family I want to protect forever. At that moment, Finn and Rory came out of the bedroom, impeccable in their tuxedos, and even Afe was moved, seeing how handsome they looked. Mammy, Finn shouted, spinning to show off his clothes. I'm like a real prince. Rory, Shia, just smiled, but it was a smile Ofa hadn't seen in months. Connor knelt and adjusted their ties. Now yes, the true princes are ready. He looked at Afe and the queen. When Afe came out of the bedroom in the blue dress, Connor felt his heart stop. She was absolutely stunning. Finn and Rory clapped, animated. Mammy became a princess, Rory shouted, forgetting his shyness. Connor approached her, offering his arm. Ready to give your ex-husband the life lesson he deserves? Aoife looked at her children, beautiful and happy for the first time in a long time. Then at Connor, who had restored dignity to her family. More than ready, she replied. And for the first time in years, she felt truly invincible. The white limousine gleamed under the afternoon sun like a spaceship that had descended from the heavens. Connor drove personally with Aifa beside him in the front seat, radiant in the royal blue dress that seemed tailor-made for her. In the back seat, Finn and Rory were glued to the window, waving to all the passing cars. Uncle Connor, everyone's looking at us, Finn shouted excitedly. Rory, usually shy, was equally thrilled. Mammy, we're famous! As the church began to appear on the horizon, Connor felt his heart race. It wasn't nervousness about the confrontation to come. It was anticipation to see Liam's face when he realized he had completely underestimated the woman he abandoned. Awife, he said softly. How are you feeling? She looked at him, and there was a confidence in her eyes that hadn't existed that morning. I'm feeling like I've never felt in my life. Powerful. The church was packed. Cars parked everywhere. Well-dressed guests walking towards the main entrance. Liam was at the door greeting people as if he were the groom, all puffed up in his dark suit that he probably bought on installments. Beside him, Maya received greetings with that fake smile of someone who thinks she's better than everyone else. "Look there," Connor pointed discreetly, the reception committee. Finn stretched to see through the window. "Is that Da?" His voice was curious, without resentment, as if seeing any stranger. Rory also looked, but remained quiet. Connor noticed the different reactions of the two. "Finn, Rory, remember what we talked about. You are true princes. No matter what anyone says, you are special." The boys nodded, serious as little soldiers preparing for battle. Connor stopped the limousine directly in front of the main entrance, where normally only wedding cars park. Immediately, dozens of heads turned. Guests stopped talking, pulled out phones to photograph, began to whisper among themselves. Who could have arrived? Must be some celebrity. What a beautiful limousine. Liam also looked, but from afar, still not recognizing who was inside the car. Connor stepped out first, impeccable in a black tuxedo that cost more than Liam's annual salary. He had that natural presence of someone in charge, that posture of a man accustomed to being respected. He circled the limousine slowly, building suspense, savoring the moment. All eyes were glued to him. Who is that man? He looks like a business tycoon, so elegant. Even Mayer stopped greeting guests to observe. When Connor opened the door for Aoife, it was as if time had frozen. She stepped out of the limousine with the elegance of a real princess, the blue dress fluttering gently in the afternoon breeze, her hair styled in a sophisticated updo that she had learned to do watching tutorials on her phone. The soft makeup enhanced the natural beauty that worries and sorrows had hidden for so long. She was absolutely stunning. "My goodness," an old woman whispered too loudly. "Who is that woman? She looks like an actress. What a wonderful dress." Aoife smiled, extending her hand to Connor, with a naturalness that surprised even herself. She felt as if she had been born for that moment, as if all the pain of recent years had merely been preparation for this transformation. But the real show began when Finn and Rory stepped out of the limousine. The two boys were impeccable in their children's tuxedos, with perfectly adjusted bow ties and neatly combed hair. Finn came out first, waving to everyone as if he were a little prince visiting his subjects. "Hello, everyone," he shouted, eliciting emotional chuckles from the ladies present. Rory came out right behind, more restrained, but equally elegant. He held Connor's hand naturally, as if he were his real father. "Uncle Connor, is everyone looking?" he whispered. But he didn't seem scared. He seemed proud. Connor knelt and adjusted his bow tie. "It's because you two are the most handsome boys at this party." Rory smiled, and it was a smile that melted the hearts of all the women present. It was at that moment that Liam finally recognized who had arrived. The fake smile disappeared from his face, as if he had been punched in the stomach. His mouth fell open, his eyes widened, his face turned white as paper. "It can't be," he mumbled, more to himself than to anyone else. Mayer followed her son's gaze and also froze. "Liam, is that Aoife?" Her voice came out strange, incredulous. "Yes," Liam replied, still in shock. "But how? Where did she get money for this?" Mayer watched the scene open-mouthed. The daughter-in-law she had always criticized, always called opportunistic and grasping, was there looking like a queen. And not only that, she was accompanied by a man who exuded power and money from every pore. Connor approached the church entrance with Aoife on one arm and the two boys walking beside them. Every step was calculated, every movement had the weight of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. When they got close to Liam, Connor stopped and smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile. It was the polite smile of someone about to give a lesson in etiquette. "Good afternoon," Connor said, extending his hand to Liam. "You must be Finn and Rory's father. I'm Connor O'Sullivan, Aoife's partner." The introduction was made with that elegant formality that only truly classy people possess. Liam stood still for a few seconds, processing the information, before extending his hand somewhat awkwardly. "Liam," he replied, trying to hide the shock in his voice. "Connor O'Sullivan. That name sounds familiar." Connor smiled wider, as if enjoying the situation. "Must be a coincidence. I have a logistics company here in the city." Liam's eyes widened. The O'Sullivan Group was the company where he worked, but it was impossible that this man was. It couldn't be. Mayer interjected, suddenly all polite. "What a pleasure to meet you, Connor and Aoife." She looked at her ex-daughter-in-law as if seeing a ghost. "You look different," Aoife smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you, Mayor." The boys are eager to see the family. As if they had rehearsed, Finn and Rory positioned themselves on either side of Connor. "Granny Meyer!" Finn shouted animatedly. "Look how handsome we are!" Meyer looked at her grandchildren, whom she rarely saw, impeccable in expensive tuxedos, and felt a pang in her chest. They were too handsome, too happy, too well cared for. Nothing like the image of abandoned, poorly cared for children Liam had painted for her. Rory, encouraged by his brother, also spoke. "Granny, Uncle Connor bought these clothes for us." The innocent sentence was like a bomb exploding in the middle of the conversation. Meyer looked at Connor with different eyes. A man who spent money buying expensive clothes for children who weren't even his own was very different from what she imagined. "Connor," Liam tried to regain control of the situation. "What company did you say you have?" Connor continued smiling, savoring every second. "O'Sullivan Group, perhaps you know it. We work in logistics and transport." Liam's world collapsed. The O'Sullivan Group was exactly the company where he had worked for 3 years. And Connor O'Sullivan was the owner, the president, the most powerful man in the entire company. You are the owner of the O'Sullivan Group," Liam stammered, his face growing paler and paler. Connor nodded modestly. "I am indeed. A family business my father started, and I managed to expand it a bit. The company was worth over €50 million. Liam had worked for 3 years, earning a minimal salary for the man who was dating his ex-wife. Meyer swallowed hard. For years, she had criticized Ife, saying she was worthless, that she didn't know how to choose a man, that she was a loser. Now she was standing in front of one of the most important businessmen in the city, who treated Aif like a queen, and her grandchildren like princes. The situation was so embarrassing she didn't know where to hide her face. "Well," Connor said, checking the expensive watch on his wrist, "I think we'd better go in. We don't want to be late for the ceremony." He offered his arm to Afe again. "Come, darling." Finn and Rory positioned themselves beside them, like a perfect family posing for a photo. The image would break the heart of anyone who knew the real story. As they entered the church, they left Liam and Meyer standing at the door, still processing what had just happened. "Liam," Meyer whispered, "you didn't tell me Awife was dating the owner of your company?" Liam couldn't answer. He was too busy trying to understand how his life had turned into a nightmare in a matter of minutes. Inside the church, heads turned to observe the family that had arrived. Ife walked with the posture of a queen, Connor with the confidence of a king, and Finn and Rory like 2 little princes who had finally found their kingdom. The revenge was only just beginning, but Liam already knew he had lost forever. The ceremony had ended, and now everyone was heading to the reception hall. Ife walked beside Connor, feeling the curious and admiring glances of all the guests. Finn and Rory ran ahead, excited about the party to come. It was impossible not to notice how people whispered as they passed. "Who is that beautiful woman? What an elegant man. Look how well dressed the children are." Liam followed a few meters behind, trying to process the situation. His mind was in a whirl. The man dating his ex-wife was literally his boss. The man to whom he lied, saying he had important contacts in the company. The man who signed his paycheck every month. The irony was so cruel it hurt physically. In the hall, Connor purposely chose a table right in the center, where everyone could clearly see Awifa and the boys. He pulled out a chair for her with that natural gentleness of a true gentleman. Finn and Rory settled beside them, behaving like little lords at a royal dinner. Their transformation was so complete that even the waiters treated them with special respect. "Uncle Connor," Finn asked softly, "why is everyone looking at us?" Connor smiled, adjusting the boy's bow tie. "Because you are the most handsome princes at the party, Finn. People are impressed when they see true royalty." Rory, who was observing the other guests, whispered, "Mammy is more beautiful than all the other women here." It was then that Auntie Breed, Meyer's sister, approached the table. She was a woman in her 60s, one of those who likes to know everyone's life and spread gossip throughout the family. "Awife, darling," she said with that false tone of interest. "What a surprise to see you here, and so well dressed." The comment came laden with thinly disguised venom. Connor politely stood up to greet the lady. "Good evening, I'm Connor O'Sullivan, Oif's partner." Auntie Breed looked him up and down, assessing the expensive suit, the designer watch, the posture of a successful man. "O'Sullivan, that surname sounds familiar to me." Connor smiled. "Perhaps you've heard of the O'Sullivan Group. It's my company." Auntie Breed's jaw almost unhinged. The O'Sullivan Group was one of the best-known companies in the city. It always appeared in newspapers, business magazines, and lists of the wealthiest entrepreneurs in the country. "You are that Connor O'Sullivan?" He nodded modestly. "I am indeed. Auntie Brid looked at Aoife with completely different eyes. The poor abandoned woman she always criticized was dating a multi-millionaire. At that moment, Liam finally had the courage to approach. He walked slowly, like someone going to his own funeral. "Connor," he said, trying to sound casual. "Can we talk for a minute?" Connor looked at Aoife, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Of course, Liam, but right here is fine. We have no secrets." Liam swallowed hard. He wanted to talk away from the children, away from Aoife, away from everyone. But Connor didn't move from the table. "It's about the company?" Liam began, his voice sounding strange. "I've worked at the O'Sullivan Group for 3 years, at the regional branch." Connor feigned surprise. "Really? What an incredible coincidence. And here I am dating your ex-wife without knowing that connection." Finn, who was listening to the conversation, looked at his father with curiosity. "Da, do you work for Uncle Connor?" The innocent question echoed around the table like a gunshot. Auntie Brid's eyes widened. Other relatives who had approached to eavesdrop also heard. Liam wanted to disappear underground. "Work," he confirmed, his voice lower. Connor smiled, placing his hand on Finn's shoulder. "What a small world, isn't it, champ? Your father is one of my employees." The word employee was said with such weight that even Liam felt the impact. Not a collaborator, not a partner, an employee. A simple employee. Maya approached the table, drawn by curiosity and embarrassment. For years, she had badmouthed Aoife to the whole family. She said that her daughter-in-law was opportunistic, that she didn't know how to take care of her children, that she was a loser. Now she was seeing the same woman being courted by the richest man she had ever met. "Connor," she tried to start a conversation. "What a wonderful company you have. We always see your campaigns on television." Connor thanked her politely. "Thank you, Maya. It's work I do with great love." He looked at Aoife. "In fact, Aoife helps me a lot with ideas to improve employee service. She has a special sensitivity for understanding people's needs." Liam felt a pang in his chest. Aoife giving advice on how to treat employees to his own boss. The irony was becoming unbearable. "Aoife has always been very observant," he said, trying to diminish her importance. Connor looked at him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Observant and intelligent, that's why I fell in love with her." Rory, who had been quiet until then, suddenly spoke. "Uncle Connor, are you going to marry Mammy?" The question came out so natural, so innocent, that it caught everyone by surprise. Connor looked at Aoife, then at the boy. "If she accepts, Rory, I would love to be your real Da." Finn clapped excitedly. "Yes, we do. You're much better than the other Da." The other Da was right there, hearing everything. Liam felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. His own children were publicly rejecting him in front of the entire family, preferring a man they had met 2 days ago. And the worst part was that he knew he deserved it. He truly had been a terrible father. "Children," Auntie Brid interjected, trying to ease the situation. "You can't talk about your father like that." But Finn, with the brutal honesty of the young, replied, "Why not, Auntie? He never calls us. He never visits us. Uncle Connor has played with us more in 2 days than he has in 2 years." The silence that followed was embarrassing. Everyone knew the child was right. Liam had truly abandoned his children after the divorce. He only appeared when he wanted to bother Aoife or when someone asked about the children. Connor noticed the general discomfort and decided to change the subject. "How about we order dinner?" he suggested, calling a waiter. "Boys, what would you like to eat?" Finn and Rory brightened up, momentarily forgetting the adult tension around them. While they chose their dishes, Connor whispered in Aoife's ear, "Are you all right?" She nodded, squeezing his hand under the table. "Never been better." Liam remained standing there, unsure whether to stay or leave. His entire strategy of humiliating Aoife had backfired. Now he was the one being humiliated in front of his entire family by his own children, and the worst was yet to come. He didn't know it yet, but Connor was only just beginning to reveal his secrets. The night had barely begun, and Liam already knew he would never be the same after that wedding. Dinner was being served when Siobhan, the bride, finally managed to break away from greetings and photos to visit the guests' tables. She was radiant in her white dress, smiling from ear to ear, until she stopped at the table where the commotion everyone was whispering about was taking place. "Aoife," she said, surprised. "My goodness, you're unrecognizable. What an incredible transformation." Siobhan had always been different from the rest of the family. She was the only one who never criticized Aoife during the marriage, and was outraged when she learned of the abandonment. "Siobhan, congratulations on your wedding," Aoife replied, standing to hug her cousin. "You look absolutely beautiful." Connor also stood politely. Connor O'Sullivan, Aoife's partner. Congratulations on your union. Siobhan looked at him, impressed. The Connor O'Sullivan? Really? You know Uncle Connor? Finn asked curiously. Siobhan knelt to be at the twins' height. Yes, I do. He's super famous. He's always on television. Rory approached shyly. Auntie Siobhan, Uncle Connor is going to be our new Da. The sentence came out so sweet, so hopeful, that even the waiters serving the table were moved. Siobhan looked at Liam, who was a few meters away, watching everything with a funeral expression. Liam, she said loud enough for him to hear. How lucky Aoife is to have found a man who values her and the children. The comment came loaded with thinly veiled criticism. Everyone understood the message. At that moment, Auntie Breed, who was dying of curiosity, asked the question everyone wanted to ask but didn't dare. Connor, may I ask how you and Aoife met? Connor smiled, looking at her affectionately. It's an interesting story, actually. He paused, savoring the moment. We met because of Liam. Everyone leaned closer, eager to hear the story. Liam felt his blood run cold. Connor continued with that calm of someone who holds all the cards. A few months ago, I discovered that an employee of my company had attempted a multi-million euro fraud against us. The silence was absolute. He forged my signature, embezzled €2 million. Maier's eyes widened. €2 million? Connor nodded gravely. When we investigated, we discovered it was Liam. The bomb exploded in the middle of the table. Auntie Brid covered her mouth, shocked. Siobhan looked at her cousin with disappointment. Maier turned white as paper. Liam, is this true? Liam tried to deny it, but no words came out. Connor continued relentlessly. When I confronted him, do you know what he said? Everyone waited in suspense. That it was Aoife's fault, that she demanded too much from him, that he needed the money to support his family. Connor looked directly at Liam, but I found out he had abandoned his family long ago. Finn, who was listening to everything without fully understanding, asked innocently, Uncle Connor, did Da steal money? The child's question echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Connor knelt to answer him at his height. He did something very wrong at work, Finn. But the important thing is that he returned everything. How did he manage to return €2 million? Siobhan asked incredulously. Connor smiled, but it was a bitter smile. That's the most interesting part of the story. He looked at Liam, who was sweating profusely. He sold the house he had bought with Aoife, the house where the boys were born and grew up. The revelation fell like a nuclear bomb. Aoife was open-mouthed. He sold our house? Connor nodded. He sold it and didn't tell you anything. He used the money to pay back what he stole, and still had some left over to impress his new girlfriend. Maier looked at her son as if seeing a monster. Liam, you sold your children's house? Rory, who was trying to understand the adults' conversation, tugged at Connor's blouse. Uncle, what is selling a house? Connor felt his chest tighten. How to explain to a 4-year-old that his father had sold the house where they lived? Rory, remember the old house where you lived with Mammy? The boy nodded. It's no longer yours. The simple explanation devastated not only Rory, but everyone who was listening. Finn also became confused. Mammy, can't we go back to our house anymore? Aoife held her children, trying not to cry in front of everyone. No, my love. Now our home is the small flat. The boys grew quiet, processing the information. Siobhan was furious. Liam, how could you do that to the children? Auntie Breed shook her head indignantly. Maier had tears in her eyes, finally understanding the kind of man she had raised. My son, she said softly, what have you become? Connor realized it was time for the final blow, but the story doesn't end there. He looked around, making sure he had everyone's attention. When I started investigating Liam's personal life to understand the reason for the fraud, I discovered an incredible woman fighting alone to raise 2 wonderful children. He looked at Aoife with genuine love in his eyes. I discovered a mother who worked 2 jobs to pay the rent for a small flat. A woman who never asked for child support because she was too proud to beg from someone who abandoned her. I felt her eyes fill with tears, but they were tears of emotion, not sadness. And I discovered 2 children, Connor continued, placing his hands on Finn and Rory's shoulders, who, even abandoned by their father, even losing their home, even going through difficulties, continued to be the most polite and affectionate boys I have ever met. The twins snuggled into him, feeling the true love they had never had from their own father. Liam finally managed to speak. Connor, please, don't do this here. His voice came out pleading, desperate. Connor looked at him without pity. Do what, Liam? Tell the truth. The same truth you hid from your family for months? He stood up, at the height of the powerful man he was. The truth about you stealing, lying, abandoning, and still blaming the victim for your own mistakes. Meyer stood up, trembling with anger. Liam, you deceived me for years. You said Aif was worthless, that she didn't take care of the children, that she was the one who destroyed the marriage. She looked at Aife with tears in her eyes. Forgive this blind old woman, my daughter. I believed his lies. Auntie Brid also stood up. Liam, you made us speak ill of a saint. Aife has always been an exemplary mother. Siobhan was indignant. Cousin, you've turned my wedding into an exhibition of your own shame. The bride was visibly upset with the situation. It was then that Finn, with that devastating innocence of children, asked the question no one expected. Mammy, why doesn't Da like us? His tiny voice came out so small, so confused, that even the waiters stopped serving to listen. Rory joined his brother. Is it because we did something wrong? The silence that followed was deafening. Aifa knelt in front of her children, holding their little faces in her hands. My princes, you never did anything wrong. You are perfect. Her tears began to flow. Sometimes adults make bad choices, and it has nothing to do with you. Connor also knelt beside her. Finn, Rory, the problem was never with you. You are the most special boys in the world. He looked at Liam. The problem is with whoever couldn't recognize the treasure they had. The twins threw themselves into Connor and Aife's arms, forming a family hug that broke the hearts of everyone present. Maya couldn't take it anymore. She approached and also knelt, hugging her grandchildren. My little darlings, forgive Granny, I didn't know anything. Finn and Rory hugged her too, because children forgive easily when they feel true love. Granny, are you going to play with us now? Rory asked hopefully. Yes, my angel. Granny will make up for all the lost time. Meyer looked at Aife. And if you let me, I want to be a real granny again. I want to help. I want to be present. Aif nodded, moved. Of course, Meyer, they need their granny. Liam remained standing there, seeing his entire family turn against him and choose Aife. Seeing his children find the love he never knew how to give. Seeing his ex-wife treated like a queen by the man who paid his salary. The irony was so cruel it hurt physically. Connor stood up and looked directly at him. Liam, on Monday you no longer need to show up for work. The sentence came with a sense of finality. Your dismissal is already being processed. Liam felt the ground collapse. Losing his job meant losing everything that remained of the life he had built with lies. Connor, please, he pleaded. I need the job. Connor shook his head. You should have thought of that before trying to steal from me, and especially before abandoning this wonderful family. He looked at Aife and the boys. Now they have someone who truly loves them, and at that moment, Liam understood that he had lost not only his job, he had lost everything forever. The party's atmosphere had completely changed. What began as a cruel revenge plan had transformed into a life lesson for the entire family. Liam was alone at a corner table, watching everyone around Aife, Connor, and the twins. Even his own mother had chosen his ex-wife's side. The loneliness he felt at that moment was the exact price of all the mistakes he had made. Connor realized it was time for the most important moment of the night. He stood up, asked to be excused, and whispered something in Siobhan's ear, who smiled and nodded animatedly. The bride took the microphone and called everyone's attention. Everyone, before we cut the cake, we have a special surprise here at the party. The entire hall turned to the table where Aife and the boys were. Connor stood up, elegant as ever, but there was genuine nervousness in his movements. He looked at Finn and Rory, who watched him curiously. Boys, may I ask permission to speak to your mammy? The twins nodded, serious, as if they were little gentlemen giving official permission. Connor smiled at them, then looked at Aife with that love that had grown in just a few days but felt eternal. Aife, he said, his voice more emotional than usual. When I met you a few days ago, I thought I was just doing justice. He paused, looking around the hall, which was in absolute silence. But I discovered I was finding the family I had searched for my entire life. Aife felt her heart race. There was something different in his way of speaking, something deeper, truer. Connor took a small blue velvet box from his pocket. The entire hall held its breath. Even Liam, at the corner table, stopped lamenting to pay attention. Oh, Aife, you taught me that family isn't who you're born with, but who chooses to stand by your side when things get tough. He knelt right there in the middle of the hall, in front of hundreds of people. Finn and Rory immediately understood what was happening. Mammy, Finn shouted excitedly. Uncle Connor is going to ask you to marry him. Rory clapped, radiant. Just like in the movies, the boys' spontaneous reaction drew emotional laughter from everyone present. It was impossible not to be charmed by those two little princes rooting for their mother's happiness. Aif Santos, Connor said, opening the box and revealing a ring that sparkled like a star. Will you marry me? But before she could answer, he added something that made all the difference. "And Finn and Rory, will you accept me as your real da?" The twins didn't hesitate for a second. "Yes," they shouted in unison, throwing themselves onto Connor in a collective hug. Aif was crying, but they were tears of pure happiness. "Connor," she said between sobs, "are you sure? We're a complicated family." He stood up, still holding the boys. "Aife, you're not complicated, you're perfect, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to the three of you." She extended her hand, trembling with emotion. Then yes, 1,000 times yes. The hall erupted in applause. Siobhan was crying with emotion. Mayer also approached in tears. "My daughter, forgive this stubborn old woman. You were always a perfect daughter-in-law, and I was too blind to see." Aife hugged her, generous as always. "It's forgiven, Maya. Now we're family again." Their reconciliation was one of the most touching moments of the night. Finn tugged at Connor's trousers, who was putting the ring on Aife's finger. "Da Connor, can we call you Da for real now?" The question came out so natural, so full of hope, that Connor had to compose himself not to cry. "You can, Finn. It would be the greatest honor of my life." Rory joined his brother. "Da Connor, are you going to live with us?" Connor knelt again, getting to their height. "Not only will I live with you, I'll be the father you deserve to have from the beginning." He looked into the boy's eyes. "I'll be at all your school plays, all your football games, all the important moments of your lives." Finn and Rory threw themselves into his lap, radiant. Auntie Brid approached, visibly moved. "Connor, may God bless this beautiful family." She looked at Alf. "My dear, you deserve all the happiness in the world." Other relatives also approached, all wanting to congratulate and apologize for years of unjust criticism. The table where Aife was became the center of the party. On the other side of the hall, Liam remained alone. He had lost everything: his job, his family's respect, his children's love, and most importantly, he had lost the chance to have been happy with an incredible woman and 2 wonderful children. He looked at that scene of happiness, knowing it could have been his if he had made different choices. Siobhan, generous as ever, approached Liam. "Cousin, there's still time for you to change." She looked in the direction of the boys. "They are your children. If you truly change, maybe you can still be a part of their lives." Liam shook his head, defeated. "Siobhan, look how they look at him. Look how happy they are." "I never managed to make them smile like that, because you never truly tried," Siobhan replied sincerely. "Connor achieved in 3 days what you couldn't in 4 years. Do you know why? Because he loves them for real." Liam looked at his children playing with Connor and Aife. It was true. They had never been as happy as they were at that moment. Connor approached the microphone, still with Finn and Rory clinging to him. "Everyone, thank you for witnessing the happiest moment of my life." His voice echoed through the hall. "But I want to take this opportunity to tell you all something important." The hall fell silent again. "I met Aife in a difficult situation. She was fighting alone, working double shifts, raising 2 children without anyone's help." Connor looked directly at where Liam was. "And do you know what impressed me most about her? She never complained, never spoke ill of the children's father, never tried to turn the boys against him. The message was clear to everyone. That is character. That is nobility. That is what truly makes someone special." Aife held his hand, moved by his words. "That's why," Connor continued, "I want everyone to know that I found not just a wife, I found a complete family. I found the meaning of my life." He knelt and picked up Finn and Rory. "And these 2 princes here taught me that being a father isn't about blood, it's about love, presence, dedication." Finn, always talkative, took the microphone from Connor's hand. "Everyone," he shouted with the spontaneity of children, "Da Connor is the best da in the world." Rory, less talkative but equally excited, shouted, "He plays with us." The boy's innocence brought affectionate laughter from everyone. Connor spoke into the microphone again. "Finn, Rory, I promise you and everyone here, I will be the father you deserve. I will protect you forever. I will love your mammy as she deserves to be loved." He looked at Aife. "And I will prove every day that family is about choice, not about chance." Mayer approached the microphone. "Can I say something too?" Connor ceded the space to her. "I want to publicly ask Aif for forgiveness." Her voice trembled with emotion. "For years, I believed lies. I spoke ill of a woman who only wanted to be a good mother and a good wife." She looked at her grandchildren. "Aif, you raised 2 angels, and I was too blind to see." Mayer's public reconciliation moved everyone. Aif stood up and hugged her in front of everyone. "Thank you, Mayer. The important thing is that now we are together." Finn and Rory also hugged their grandmother, definitively sealing the peace in the family. Siobhan took the microphone, radiant. Folks, what a blessed wedding. We started with one union and ended with two. She looked at Connor and Aoife. May God bless this beautiful family. You deserve all the happiness in the world. The hall erupted in applause again. As the party continued, Connor approached Aoife. Are you happy? She looked at Finn and Rory, playing with other children, completely integrated and joyful. I never thought it would be possible to be so happy. Connor smiled. It's just the beginning, my love. Our children will grow up knowing they are truly loved. Our children, she repeated, savoring the words. I like the sound of that. Connor kissed her gently. Family isn't who abandons you in difficulty. Family is who finds you when you need them most. Aoife looked around, seeing all those people who now respected and loved her. Thank you for finding me. From the corner of the hall, Liam watched everything. He had learned the most painful lesson in life, that true love cannot be forced, cannot be bought, cannot be faked. Either you give it from the heart, or you lose it forever. He had lost the most precious family in the world for not knowing how to love when he had the chance. When the party ended, Connor, Aoife, Finn, and Rory left together. A true family, united by love, who chooses to stay, who chooses to protect, who chooses to build. They got into the limousine not as four separate people, but as an indestructible unit. Finn snuggled into Connor's lap. Now we are a family of princes. Connor laughed, kissing the boy's forehead. Yes, we are, a royal family, Rory completed. And Mammy is our queen. Aoife smiled, finally at peace. And you are my kings. The lesson was complete. Family is who loves you when you have nothing to offer but yourself. It is who sees you as beautiful when you feel ugly. It is who protects you when the whole world attacks you. And sometimes that family isn't born with you. It finds you exactly when you need to be found the most. This was a fictional story created for entertainment and reflection.